50 years ago, a small car company in England turned out a sports car that changed the way people thought about fast cars. That car was the Lotus Elan, and the car that it spawned, the Mazda Miata, changed the industry in almost as significant a way. We're here today at Mazda Raceway, Laguna Seca to take a look at what lessons these cars can teach us. It's funny, Laguna is one of the few magic American tracks. It's hallowed ground, but it's also a name that everybody recognizes. It's neat because you drive a car like an MX-5 or an Elan here, you drive something here that really works very well, and the track just disappears beneath you. And there aren't a lot of racetracks that have the same kind of flow and personality that this place does. When you do a lap around this track in this car, and in the Elan too, you just don't want it to stop. So this is a 1967 Lotus Elan. It's got a fiberglass body, a twin-cam four-cylinder that makes about 100 horsepower, and it weighs around 1,500 pounds. And this came out of Lotus at a time when its founder, Colin Chapman, was still deeply involved in the workings of the company. Everything they built and stuck in a showroom was designed to make money to keep the race team afloat, which means that the profit margins on all of it had to be really, really thin. So you get into this, and there's a lot of borrowed parts. The front suspension came from a Triumph Spitfire, so did the steering rack. The rear suspension is unique to the car, but it's as thin and light and delicate as it can be. And as a result, the doors are light enough to be blown open in a breeze. The hood doesn't actually have hinges. It just kind of sits on the body of the car. You can lift the thing off with one hand. Everything on it is repurposed from somewhere else, and yet it works so well and just feels at home here. So you may ask yourself, okay, fine, so it's a car made up of someone else's parts. It's a bunch of things from a bunch of different parts bin. How is it special? Well, what makes it special is the Lotusness of it all. Lotus has always been known for taking rather subpar collections of parts and building them into something really special, and that's what's here. They ended up with something that has almost perfect 50-50 weight distribution, front and rear, and left and right, in stock form. It's really softly sprung and rides really well, even though it generates a massive amount of grip. That was Lotus's philosophy at the time, was that everything had to have lots of suspension travel for lumpy British B roads and be really comfortable. And so as a result, it rides better than a 60s Jaguar. It rides better than a lot of 60s American cars. And yet, it still handles really well. And when I mean really well, I mean it's the benchmark, and was the benchmark for 20 or 30 years for what a sports car should feel like. When it came out, nothing drove like this. Nothing was as docile and predictable. Your grandmother could get in this thing and drift it. It was thoroughly modern then, and the surprising thing is it still feels modern now. So the byproduct of the way this car was built is that there are a lot of cheap touches about it, On the early cars, there's this tension stay rod that holds the windshield. It actually keeps the glass from popping out of the flexible fiberglass frame when you go over bumps. On the other cars, that was just a repurposed bicycle spoke. The gauges basically came out of a late 1950s, early 1960s British sedan. They're nothing special. You look at them, they don't make you feel anything. The chrome is all really thin and pits easily, and none of the hardware feels substantial. But you don't care. It's not in any way a premium car, because you get in it and you drive it, and it overpowers everything else. Now the Miata is the same basic theme updated. And remember, that car came out in the late 80s, and by the time the first MX-5 appeared, cars like this were gone. But what the Miata guys did was take the spirit of this thing and translate it there. And as a result, that car has similar balance. The steering is really good. It has a relatively pedestrian motor that makes a decent amount of horsepower, but it feels, you don't think about the relatively inexpensive interior bits. You don't think about the fact that the sheet metal's thin. You don't think about the fact that on a highway it's noisy, because the car's just so much fun. They zeroed in on what matters about this thing and just turned it up to 11. So a stock MX-5 is is a blank canvas in a lot of ways. And what most people end up doing is adding a little more power, adding a little bit of brake, adding a little more tire, and a little more suspension geometry. And that's what Mazda did here. The best thing about this thing is that when you get close to its handling limits, when you're really using everything it's got, it just keeps being an MX-5. And it's just like an Elan in that at its core, you keep feeling what's good about the car, no matter what you do to it. You can't take that away, no matter how much you change it. The MX-5 is a lot like a Porsche Boxster or an Elan or any other small, diminutive car through history that gets knocked for being effeminate or a girl's car or dainty. And you don't care about that, because if you really know what you're doing, you get in it and you drive it and it just makes up for the way it looks. And you come to love the cheeky smile on the front. You know, you look at the Elan and you look at this thing and both of them have that same look on their face where they're both just kind of like, what's up? Let's go start some. Now the great thing about this is that it's a quick car that you can actually use on a road. You can drive this thing down a mountain road and spank the absolute hell out of it and have your foot to the floor 90% of the time. And yeah, maybe you'll be breaking a couple of laws, but you won't be endangering anybody. You never feel like you're doing anything stupid. It's just so progressive and easy. There's so much that's not here that all you end up thinking about is the road you're on and how you're driving and how much fun you're having. It's just transparent. You hammer both of these things through the corkscrew, and when you feel the whole chassis just whomp down and settle, it just makes you laugh. And you let out this impromptu just giggle. And that's what we need to remember. As cars get fatter and more complicated and more powerful, as highways clog with traffic and the environment becomes more of an issue and fuel economy is paramount, speed will matter less. It already almost does. And cars like this have so much to teach us because they prize emotion over numbers. I get out of this and I don't ever want to drive anything else. I get out of a Miata and I think that the rest of the car industry is broken. That's pretty important and that's worth remembering. And if we don't remember that, we're going to end up with 4,000 pound, 600 horsepower sports cars that you can't use anywhere and nobody enjoys driving. This is supposed to be fun. And that's what's so great about these things.